I was already halfway to the elevator when I heard it. A chair shifting somewhere behind me. Not loud, just enough to make me stop. The office had been silent for over an hour. Lights off. Screens black. Even the hum of the printers had died down. I remember standing there with my coat half on, one sleeve still dangling, staring at the reflection of the empty hallway in the glass wall beside me. Everyone had left. At least, I thought they had. I turned slowly, my heels clicking once against the tile before I froze again, listening. Nothing. Just that hollow late-night stillness that makes every small sound feel like it's coming from inside your own head. "Hello," I called out softer than I expected. No answer. I exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking it off. "You're just tired," I whispered to myself, pulling my sleeve on the rest of the way. I reached for the light switch. And then it happened again. A subtle movement. Closer this time. Not a sound you imagine. Not a maybe. Someone was there. My fingers hovered near the switch, but I didn't turn it on. I don't know why. Maybe part of me didn't want to break whatever strange, suspended moment I'd stepped into. Or maybe I just wanted to know who stayed behind. And why. So instead I walked back. Slowly. Quietly. Past the row of empty desks, past the conference room with the glass door slightly open, the faint smell of stale coffee still lingering in the air. My heart was beating harder now, not from fear exactly, but something else. Something I couldn't quite name. Curiosity, maybe. Or something warmer. I rounded the corner toward the far end of the office, the part no one uses after hours, and that's when I saw it. A faint glow. Not from the ceiling lights. From a desk lamp. And beneath it a figure. Leaning forward. Elbows on the table. One hand dragging slowly across their face like they'd been there for a while. I stopped. Because I recognized him. And suddenly the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt charged. It was Nathan. Of course it had to be Nathan. Even sitting there in near darkness, tie loosened, white shirt wrinkled at the elbows, he looked like he belonged in a different version of the office than the one the rest of us worked in. Colder. Quieter. More dangerous somehow. The desk lamp threw a warm circle of light across one side of his face, leaving the other in shadow, and for a second he didn't move at all. Then he lifted his head and looked straight at me. I should have said something normal. A joke. A casual, "You scared me." Anything that would have returned us to the safe version of ourselves. Co-workers, nothing more, one more late night, no story in it. But the truth is, Nathan had never felt safe to me. Not because he was cruel. He wasn't. He was careful. Measured. The kind of man who spoke softly and somehow made people lean in anyway. He remembered details no one else caught. He held eye contact a second too long. He always seemed completely in control, and I hated how much that unsettled me. Especially because he was my boss's husband. He didn't work for the company officially, but he was there often enough. Investor dinners. Holiday parties. The occasional late meeting with my boss, Lila, when numbers or contracts kept her in the building long after sunset. Everyone liked him. Why wouldn't they? He knew exactly how to smile, exactly when to step back, exactly how to make people feel seen without ever revealing too much of himself. But with me it had never felt effortless. It had felt aware. The first time I noticed it was 6 months earlier in the break room. I dropped a folder, papers sliding everywhere, and before anyone else reacted, he was already kneeling to help me gather them. His hand brushed mine when he passed the last page back. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anyone else would have even noticed. Still, he looked up at me from the floor and said, "You always look like you're carrying more than you say." I laughed then because what else was I supposed to do? But that sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. Now, standing in the dark with my bag still hanging from my shoulder, I felt that same strange pressure in my chest, like he'd caught me in a moment I hadn't meant to share. "You're still here," I said finally. His mouth tilted, almost a smile. "So are you." I glanced toward the hallway behind me, then back at him. I thought everyone left. Nathan leaned back in the chair, the leather creaking softly beneath him. A file was open on the desk, but he wasn't looking at it anymore. He was looking at me. Only me. "Lila left an hour ago," he said. I stayed to finish reading. Something about hearing her name snapped the air tighter between us. Lila. My boss. My mentor. The woman who trusted me with everything. The woman who had pulled me into her office 2 years ago, slid a promotion letter across the desk and said, "Don't make yourself smaller just because other people are comfortable that way." I admired her. I owed her. And standing there in the low amber light, feeling my pulse in my wrists, I hated that part of me noticed how close Nathan's chair was to the edge of the desk. How open his collar looked. How tired he seemed. How human. "I didn't mean to interrupt," I said, adjusting my grip on my bag. "You didn't." His voice was quiet, steady, but there was something under it now. Something that made me stay where I was instead of turning around. He looked at my coat, then back at my face. "You looked like you were about to run." I let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. I heard a noise in a dark office. That feels like a reasonable reaction. That got a real smile out of him, brief and low. "Fair." For a second, neither of us spoke. The air conditioner clicked somewhere overhead. Down the hall, an exit sign glowed red against the glass. My phone vibrated once inside my bag, then went still. Nathan's gaze dropped to it. "You should probably go home." I should have. Instead, I stepped closer to the desk. Just one step. Not enough to explain. Too much to call accidental. His eyes lifted to mine again, and whatever was unspoken between us changed shape. Not into something clear. Something worse. Something real. I don't know what made me stay. Maybe it was the way the office felt different now. Smaller somehow, like the walls had quietly shifted while I wasn't looking. Or maybe it was the way Nathan didn't move when I stepped closer. He didn't lean in. Didn't pull away. He just watched me. And that was worse. "You always stay this late?" I asked, setting my bag down on the edge of the nearest desk. It made a soft thud that echoed more than it should have. Nathan glanced at the bag, then back at me. "Only when there's something I don't want to bring home." The words landed gently but not lightly. I crossed my arms, more to give my hands somewhere to go than anything else. "That sounds ominous." "It's not." He paused, then added quieter, "Just complicated." Something in my chest tightened at that. I didn't ask what he meant. I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Instead, I moved a little closer to the pool of light from his desk lamp. Close enough that I could see the faint crease between his brows, like he'd been thinking too hard for too long. Close enough to notice the slow rise and fall of his chest. "You scared me," I said, softer now. "I noticed." His voice dropped just enough to match the tone. For a second we just stood there, suspended in that strange space between conversation and something else. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full of things neither person is saying. I reached out without really thinking and tapped the edge of the open file on his desk. "Big decision?" Nathan looked down at it, almost like he'd forgotten it was there. "Investment proposal," he said. "Numbers that don't quite add up." "Lila's?" He nodded once. That should have been the moment everything snapped back into place. Professional distance. Clear lines. The reminder of who he was, who she was, who I was in relation to both of them. But instead it only made the air feel heavier. Because now we weren't just standing too close in a dark office. We were standing in something that belonged to her. "She trusts you with that?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Nathan's gaze lifted again, slower this time. "She trusts me with everything." The way he said it didn't sound proud. It sounded careful. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close I was to the desk. How close I was to him. If I leaned forward even slightly, the space between us would disappear completely. So I didn't move. Neither did he. But something shifted anyway. "You're good at your job," he said after a moment. The change in subject caught me off guard. "What?" "I've been watching," he added, then seemed to realize how that sounded. A faint, almost apologetic smile touched his mouth. Not in a strange way. Just you notice things. Details. Lila relies on that. My pulse picked up quick and uneven. "You've never said anything before." "I try not to interfere." Tonight feels like interference. It might be. The honesty in that answer landed somewhere deeper than I expected. I looked down at the desk, at the neat stacks of paper, at the pen resting perfectly parallel to the edge. Anything to break the intensity of his gaze. But then his hand moved. Just slightly. He reached for the pen, and his fingers brushed mine. It was nothing. An accident. Barely even contact. But my entire body reacted like it was something else entirely. A small, sharp breath caught in my throat before I could stop it. My hand stilled against the desk, and for a second neither of us pulled away. His touch was warm. Too warm. I lifted my eyes slowly, and he was already looking at me. Not surprised. Not apologizing. Just aware. And that was the moment I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. This wasn't one-sided. It never had been. The silence stretched, thinner now, like it might break if either of us spoke too loudly. So when I finally did speak, my voice barely made it past my lips. This is a bad idea. Nathan didn't move his hand. Didn't step back. Didn't even pretend not to understand. Yeah, he said quietly. But he didn't let go either. He didn't let go. And I didn't pull away. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden movement, no rush. Just his fingers resting lightly against mine on the desk, like both of us were waiting for the other to decide what this meant. My heart was beating too fast for how still everything else felt. This crosses a line, I said, but my voice didn't carry the weight it should have. It sounded uncertain, like I was trying to convince myself more than him. Nathan's thumb shifted barely, but enough for me to feel it. A slow, absent motion against the side of my hand. I know, he replied. Still no distance. The air felt warmer now, heavier. I could hear the faint buzz of the lamp above us, the distant hum of the building settling into the night. Every small sound felt amplified against the quiet between us. Then why aren't you stopping? I asked. His eyes dropped to where our hands touched, then back to my face. There was something unguarded in his expression now. Something I hadn't seen before. Because you didn't, he said. That landed harder than anything else. I inhaled slowly, my chest tightening. That's not fair. No, he agreed softly. It's not. But neither of us moved. The space between us felt fragile. Like one breath in the wrong direction would shatter it. And maybe that's why I didn't step back. Because as wrong as it was, as complicated as it would become the second we acknowledged it fully, there was something undeniable here. Something that had been building long before tonight. You shouldn't look at me like that, I whispered. Nathan's brow furrowed slightly. Like what? Like I stopped myself, shaking my head once. Like you've already decided something. A faint exhale left him, almost a quiet laugh. Not amused. Just tired. I haven't decided anything, he said. That's the problem. His hand finally shifted, but instead of pulling away it turned slowly, until his fingers slid more fully against mine. Not gripping. Not claiming. Just there. Intentional now. My breath caught again, sharper this time. I could feel the warmth of his skin, the steady pressure. The way it grounded me and unbalanced me at the same time. You're married, I said. The words felt heavier in the air than I expected. Nathan didn't flinch. But something in his gaze changed. Not defensive. Not guilty. Just honest. I know. And my voice faltered. I swallowed. She's important to me. I know that too. The fact that he didn't argue, didn't minimize it, didn't try to soften the truth made it worse. Because now there was no illusion. No excuse. Just a choice. And we were both standing right in the middle of it. My fingers moved before I could stop them. A slight shift, a response to his touch. Not pulling away. Answering. Nathan's eyes dropped again, catching the movement. His jaw tightened subtly, like he felt it too. Like it wasn't small to him either. You should go home, he said again, but this time it sounded different. Rougher. Like the words were being forced out past something stronger. I let out a quiet breath that felt like it carried too much with it. Say it like you mean it, I replied. His gaze lifted slowly, locking with mine. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, softer than before. Almost like a confession slipping out before he could stop it. I don't want you to go. The words settled between us, fragile and dangerous. And everything inside me shifted. Because now it wasn't just tension. It was permission. The moment he said it, something inside me gave way. Not all at once. Not dramatically. It was quieter than that, like a slow unraveling I'd been holding together for far too long. I don't want you to go. Those words didn't echo. They settled. Heavy. Real. I should have stepped back right then. Instead, I moved closer. Just enough that the edge of the desk pressed lightly against my hips. Just enough that I could feel the warmth of him without even touching anything more than his hand. Nathan noticed. Of course he did. His gaze dropped briefly, not in avoidance but in awareness. Tracking the shift. Measuring it. Like he was giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't accusation. It was something softer. More dangerous. Honest. Nathan's fingers tightened slightly around mine. Not enough to hold me in place, just enough to let me feel that he was still there. Still choosing this moment. You already know why, he said quietly. I shook my head even though part of me did know. Had known for longer than I wanted to admit. Say it, I pressed. The air between us shifted again. Thinner now. Like whatever line we'd been circling was finally about to disappear. His jaw tensed slightly. I watched the movement, the hesitation. It wasn't fear. It was restraint. And then slowly. Because when you walk into a room, he said, everything feels sharper. My breath hitched. He didn't look away. I notice when you're there. I notice when you're not. A pause. And I shouldn't. The last part came quieter. Too late. Because the first part had already done its damage. My heart was racing now, loud enough I was sure he could hear it. I tried to steady my breathing, but it only made me more aware of how close we were. You're saying this like it just happened, I said, though my voice wavered slightly. Like this is new. Nathan shook his head once. It's not. That single answer landed deeper than anything else. Not new. Meaning all those moments, the lingering glances, the way conversations felt slightly too personal, the quiet tension I kept telling myself I imagined, none of it had been accidental. My fingers curled slightly against his, no longer passive, no longer uncertain. Then why now? I asked. The question felt fragile, like it might break something if it was answered too honestly. Nathan exhaled slowly, his free hand coming up to rest on the edge of the desk beside me. Closer now. Not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Because we're alone, he said. The simplicity of it made my stomach tighten. No distractions. No roles. No one watching. Just this. Just us. I swallowed, my gaze dropping briefly to his mouth before I could stop myself. The movement was small but not invisible. When I looked back up, he had seen it. Of course he had. The air shifted again, this time unmistakably. You should stop me, I whispered. But I didn't move. Nathan's expression softened just slightly. Not relief. Not victory. Something more conflicted. If I do, he said quietly, will you actually leave? The question held me in place more than his touch ever could. I opened my mouth to answer. But nothing came out. Because we both knew the truth. And the silence said it for me. Nathan's hand finally lifted from mine. But only to move higher. Slowly. Carefully. Until his fingers brushed against my wrist. My pulse jumped beneath his touch, fast and unsteady. He felt it. I saw it in the way his breath shifted just slightly. Everything slowed down after that. The room. The sound. The distance between us. Tell me to stop, he said, his voice lower now. But his hand didn't move away. It stayed right there. Resting over my pulse like he was listening to it. Waiting. I should have said it. I should have ended it right there. Instead, I stepped closer again. And this time, there was no space left between us. There was no space left. I could feel the warmth of him through the thin fabric of my blouse, the faint rise of his chest brushing against mine every time either of us breathed. It wasn't a collision. It was slower than that. Intentional. Like we had both stepped into something we couldn't step back out of. My hand was still caught lightly in his fingers resting at my wrist, feeling every uneven beat. Say something, I whispered, though I wasn't sure what I wanted him to say. Nathan didn't answer right away. His gaze moved over my face, not rushed, not careless. Careful. Like he was memorizing something he wasn't supposed to have. You're shaking, he said quietly. I'm not. I replied too quickly. That made something soften in his expression. Not amusement. Recognition. His other hand lifted slowly, hesitating just for a second before it came to rest at my waist. Not pulling me closer, I was already there. Just holding me there. And that was enough. My breath caught, shallow now, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. Every nerve felt too awake, too aware of where he touched, where he didn't. "This is a mistake," I said again, but the words barely had shape anymore. Nathan's thumb moved slightly against my wrist, a slow, grounding motion. Yeah. Still not stopping. Still not letting go. The contradiction of it made my chest tighten. My hands, almost on their own, found his shirt, fingers curling lightly into the fabric at his chest, feeling the tension beneath it. He exhaled at that. Not loudly, just enough that I felt it between us. That sounded something to me. Something final. "You're not even trying to stop this," I murmured. His hand at my waist shifted slightly, fingers pressing just enough to make me aware of the contact. "Neither are you." The honesty of it left no room to hide. I looked up at him, really looked this time. At the conflict in his eyes, the restraint that was still there but slipping, the way he held himself like he was balancing on something fragile. And then my gaze dropped again. To his mouth. It wasn't intentional, but it was clear. Nathan noticed. I saw it in the way his breathing changed, in the slight pause before he moved. "Tell me to stop," he said again. Softer this time. Closer. But now his face was inches from mine. Close enough that I could feel his breath against my cheek. Warm. Steady. Too steady compared to the way my own was breaking apart. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because everything inside me was louder than the part that knew better. His hand at my waist tightened just slightly, and that was all it took. The distance disappeared. Not all at once. Slowly. Like both of us knew that once it happened, there was no pretending it hadn't. My eyes closed before I realized I'd made the choice. And then, a light snapped on. Bright. Sudden. Blinding. Down the hallway. Both of us froze. The moment shattered instantly like glass hitting the floor. Nathan pulled back first, his hand dropping from my waist. I stepped away just as quickly, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to escape. We both turned at the same time. Toward the hallway. Toward the light. And the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Someone was there. Someone who hadn't left. And hadn't just arrived either. The realization hit me all at once, cold and sharp. They had been there. The whole time. The footsteps didn't rush. They echoed. Slow. Measured. Getting closer. I felt my stomach drop as I instinctively stepped back, putting distance between me and Nathan like it could erase the last few minutes. My fingers were still curled slightly, like they remembered the shape of his shirt. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there, too still, too aware, listening as the sound moved down the hallway toward us. Then a shadow stretched across the floor, and she stepped into the light. Lila. For a second, my brain refused to process it. Like if I didn't fully recognize her, the moment wouldn't be real. But there she was, heels in hand, hair slightly undone, her blazer draped over her arm like she'd just come back for something she forgot. Or maybe, had never really left. Her eyes moved from me to Nathan. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Carefully. Taking everything in. The distance between us. The tension still hanging in the air. The way neither of us knew where to put our hands. No one said a word. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then Lila set her heels down on the nearest desk. The soft click of them against the surface sounded louder than anything else in the room. "I forgot my charger," she said calmly. Too calmly. Her voice didn't shake. Didn't rise. It was controlled in a way that made my chest tighten even more. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. Because what could I possibly say? Sorry. It hadn't even happened. Not really. But somehow that made it worse. Because everything that almost happened was still there. Written all over us, impossible to hide. Nathan finally moved, running a hand through his hair, stepping slightly forward like he was about to speak. But Lila's gaze snapped to him, sharp now. Not loud. Not angry. Worse. Clear. "Don't," she said. Just one word. Stopped him completely. I'd never seen him look unsure before. Not like that. Not with her. Lila turned back to me, and for the first time, I felt something break inside my chest. She didn't look confused. She didn't look shocked. She looked disappointed. "You're still here," she said. The same words Nathan had said to me earlier, but they didn't sound the same anymore. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to find something, anything to hold on to. "I was just leaving," I managed. My voice felt chuja, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Lila nodded once slowly. Her eyes didn't leave mine. "I see." But she didn't. Not really. Because if she did, she would have seen everything I couldn't say out loud. The hesitation. The closeness. The moment right before. I looked away first. I couldn't hold her gaze. Not with the weight of it pressing into me like that. Nathan shifted again, his voice low. "Lila." I said don't. Softer this time. But final. The room felt smaller than ever. I grabbed my bag too quickly, nearly knocking it off the desk before catching it. My hands were shaking now, no point denying it anymore. I should go," I said, already stepping back. Lila didn't stop me. She just watched. And that somehow hurt more. I moved past her, close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume. Familiar, steady, grounding. The same scent that used to make me feel safe walking into her office. Now it made my chest ache. I reached the hallway, the bright light still too harsh after the dimness we'd been standing in. But just before I turned the corner, did it happen? Her voice stopped me cold. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The question hung there, sharp and impossible. Not what she saw. Not what she assumed. What mattered? The truth. My throat tightened. Because the answer wasn't simple. And somehow that made it worse. "No," I said quietly. A pause. Then softer. But it almost did. The silence behind me changed. Not louder. Not quieter. Just heavier. And I knew without turning that everything had already shifted. Even if nothing had technically happened, there was no going back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on top of my sheets, still in the same clothes, staring at the ceiling while the city moved quietly outside my window. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it again. His hand at my wrist, the way my body had leaned in before my mind could stop it, the almost. It wasn't the almost that haunted me. It was how much I hadn't wanted to stop. My phone lit up on the nightstand around 2:17 a.m. One message. From Lila. I stared at her name for a long time before opening it. "Be in early tomorrow. We need to talk." No anger. No explanation. Just that. Morning came too fast. The office looked the same as it always did. Glass walls, quiet conversations, the low hum of keyboards, but it felt different. Like everyone knew something I hadn't said out loud. Or maybe I just couldn't pretend anymore. I kept my head down as I walked to my desk. My hands were steady now, but only because I was forcing them to be. Nathan wasn't there. That shouldn't have mattered. But it did. At 8:32 my phone buzzed again. Now. I didn't bring anything with me when I walked into her office. No notebook. No laptop. Nothing to hide behind. Lila was standing by the window, looking out over the street. The same way she always did when she was thinking through something important. She didn't turn when I walked in. Close the door. I did. The soft click sounded louder than it should have. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she exhaled slowly and finally turned around. Her expression was calm. Too calm. "Look at me," she said. I forced myself to. Felt harder than anything else. "Do you have feelings for him?" No build-up. No hesitation. Just the question that mattered. My chest tightened instantly. My first instinct was to say no. To protect what was left of this, my job, her trust, the version of myself I recognized. But I thought about last night. About the way I didn't step back. About the silence where my answer should have been. And I realized lying now would only make me smaller. "Yes," I said. The word barely made it out, but it landed between us like something irreversible. Lila nodded once. Not surprised. Not even hurt in the way I expected. Just certain. "Does he have feelings for you?" Another pause. Another truth I couldn't avoid. "Yes." She looked down briefly, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of her desk. That was the only crack. The only moment she let something real slip through. Then she straightened again. "Okay." That was it. No raised voice. No accusation. Just acceptance. And somehow that was worse. I'm going to make this simple, she continued, her voice steady again. You're good at what you do. I meant that when I hired you. I still mean it now. My throat tightened. But this. She gestured lightly between us, like the word itself wasn't worth saying out loud. This doesn't exist here. I nodded quickly. I understand. Do you? She asked, not harsh, just precise. I swallowed. Yes. Her eyes held mine for a long second, searching for something. Then she stepped back. Then we move forward, she said. Not together. Not past it. Just forward. I left her office feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Like I had just kept everything. And lost something I hadn't fully touched yet. Nathan still wasn't there. He didn't come in that day. Or the next. And eventually the office went back to normal. At least on the surface. But sometimes, late in the evening, when the lights dim and the silence stretches just a little too long, I still feel it. That moment. That almost. Like a breath I never finished taking. And maybe that's the worst kind of betrayal. Not the one that happens. But the one you wanted to.